Detroit Tigers fixable? We'll find out. Listen, Cody Newberry back with the final episode of our first day run. Thomas Scully, we've been here. Yes, we're in the same outfits because we're doing this consecutively. You should have figured that out by now. I want Detroit to be back, and I want Detroit to be good. I like when Detroit is good. I like their park. Bigger changes. Thank God that ginormous ballpark is now getting renovated. The walls are coming in. I always liked Comerica Park because how big they were. You is doubles for days out there. But they realized, man, I have a lot of strong players, but they can't reach the seats as often as I would like them to. And with that, they're moving them in. I think the Detroit Tigers are savable because I think they have a strong coach. I think they just made dumb choices in free agent acquisition. I think that's where the thing is. And we talked about this last season. We thought Detroit was on the ups because they made some moves, they made some trades, they did some things that we were like, oh, things should be a changing. And it was just catastrophic. They had one of the worst seasons. To be a Detroit fan, it had to be very rough to watch overall. They finished last in the division, right? Did they finish behind or the Royals?
Sorry, they finished one game better than the Royals.
Okay, one game better than the Royals. And I think they made some trades that are going to make this year a little harder for them overall. I don't know if they're going to be on the upper run, but they also had some different things like Erod they got from the Red Sox. He missed a good chunk of games for personal reasons. He was just out and just couldn't go. Thank you for that. Glad we didn't sign him. But yeah, Scully's going to take us through. This team is fixable. This team is beyond fixable. They're going to be wanting. They want to be there. This was a team. We got to think back less than 10 years ago. Had so much money on the table, spent so much money. It never panned out for them, but they spent a ton to get there. So this team wants to win. They're going to be back. They just don't. I don't think they have the smart front office to get there at some point. So I think it's going to take some work. Let's go. Is going to go through what they lost and what they gained. Coach?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So if we Tigers were such a frustrating team to watch last season because you give all this money to a guy like Javier Baez for him to swing at pitches 5 miles outside the zone. But in terms of what they were able to do this year, their biggest addition was getting rid of Al Avila, the horrible GM. They bring some fresh faces in, and they're able to sort of reconfigure the bullpen. They get rid of guys like Joe Jimenez and Gregory Soto. They trade them off to the all powerful NL East now, and they get some prospects in return. They also get Matt Vierling in return. Vierling was a pretty valuable part of that Phillies team that went to the World Series. He and Brandon Marsh split time in center field, where he's still a pretty solid player. So I think he'll fit right in to the Tigers. Matthew Boyd also returning to the Tigers after being elsewhere for a while. And then Michael Lorenzen, arguably the greatest pitcher to hit a baseball in today's game, is there too. So we'll see if he hits more homers than Baez this year. So we'll see what happens there. But again, this team is just. I had such high hopes last season because it looked like they were finally turning the corner in that rebuild. But then injuries set in, the pitching tanked. Guys like Spencer Torkelson just could not find any level of consistency in the lineup, and it led to 66 wins. So yeah, it's frustrating because one of my best friends, shout out Jonah Blatt, love you, buddy. You're a long suffering Tigers fan. I really hope this season works out somewhat for you guys, but right now it ain't good. It just ain't good.
We talked about the Pittsburgh Pirates, also like a great color combo for this team. I love the combo. I love the
Love me some blue
D.
and orange. Can't
Yeah,
deny that.
yeah, exactly. Ugh. Um, yeah, we won't even get
Say it.
to. Luckily, we don't talk. Luckily, we don't talk about football right now. Um, Overall, this team, I have disagreement. You saw Scully's on the sheet we picked up, his MVP and his player to watch. I strongly disagree on his MVP. I think Baez is just he can't if he can find himself again, sure. There was that caliber of player that's in there.
If
One,
he
I
can
don't know.
if he can go back to that 2017, 2016 version of himself, he
That's a
will
long time ago.
100% be that the most valuable player in that dugout because when he is playing at a superstar level, he is legitimately one of the most exciting players in the game. It's the
So
other parts where he's swinging at flies in the outfield uh, that it just
well,
it's not good.
so what I think needs to happen overall, what I think needs to happen is he needs to like, and this is shocking for how much he gets paid, but like this spring training, they need to spend a ton of time with him of like working back his mechanics and dropping his leg kick or doing something, getting him off, just getting the most straight through the ball possible. Because when he's good, he's great. When he's bad, he's the worst player on the field, and it shows defensively, offensively. It's across the board. He's a nut. He gets rattled in the at the plate. He's rattled all over the field. So I don't think he's overall the MVP of the team. I picked Spencer Torkelson. The reason why I picked him, I don't know if he's going to be the MVP of this team, but the fact is he needs to be the MVP of this team. Like of that first baseman, he's another prospect that's got a lot of praise, a lot of showing around him. They were talking about his first debut. He was number one or up there for the longest time. He didn't pan out very well last season. But again, no one else on the Tigers really panned out either. And that ballpark was very hard to hit in. I think with everything moved in, what Detroit won, teams coming in, if I was a pitcher in Detroit, I'm going to be a little bit more stressed out because balls already fly in Comerica Park, but they're going to fly even farther now when the balls are coming. You're not going to have that big of a room or gap where it could have been off the wall is now 6, 7 rows into the
It's
stand.
now over the wall.
No pun intended. This is why we keep Scully around. Great promotional. So that's my problem. I think he can be that player, but he needs to be the player. He needs to take that step forward. He needs to command that space. He needs to be that strong bat in the lineup. Um, my player to watch is I'm going to go with Spencer Turnbull. It's the reason why I picked him is I think he's also in the same point. He needs to be able to put a season together and have that ability. If he doesn't, I don't think they go very far. Erod and Baez, they have to already be going. This team, if they're going to be successful, he's got to be the ace of that squad. He's got to be able to lock down innings and he's got to be able to pitch past the fifth, which never happened in Boston. And Baez has to stop swinging and stuff. But if these two cores pitch become a number two and pitch and can hit in front of Torkelson or behind Torkelson, this team can go. They have to have that. So that's why I kind of picked those two little off the wall picks. But yeah, I'm kind of excited to see because it'll be one of the games I watch, like one of the first weeks I watch, because I'm an MLB TV nut. I will watch like anything. Um, but I'll definitely check out in that new ballpark where the walls are and see what happens. But I think it's going to be some home runs. They have just the hardest stretch down the like at the end of the season. Like they play Houston, New York, White Sox, New York, White Sox, and then they have the Angels and Dodgers come in. Like it's a strong like that's why I just don't think this team this year makes the playoffs. I think they probably finish last in the division.
This
Um
is this is the one team that if we're looking at all the teams who entered rebuilds in the last few, this is the one team that suffered not just a minor setback, but a major multi-year setback in their rebuild because of the decisions made the last not this one, but the last offseason before that. The decisions made to completely go for broke over a guy like Javier Baez and not enough investment in your pitching staff when your biggest investment is a guy who was third guy in the rotation his whole career. Terrible decision making on that front. It just goes to show that if you are a GM, yes, spend money to improve your team, but don't just throw money to guys who are not consistent, who cannot be consistent in the roles that you try to carve out for them. Doesn't matter who the manager is, doesn't matter who the hitting coach is or the pitching coach is. It ultimately comes down to you and your decision making. And the decision making Al Avila made is the reason why this team will not sniff the playoffs this year nor next year. They're gonna have to wait another 2 years before they even think about the playoffs.
So, again, we're tying in sports betting this year. We're going to have some fun, some wagers between each other. I have an outstanding, like, outrageous what this sports book is. I'm not saying like they have their win total at 70.5.
Interesting.
I think there's 71 wins if everything goes correctly. We've got to also feature that we don't even talk about. Austin Meadows like came out and said of like he's suffering from anxiety, like really bad. That's what his season is. That we don't know if that's fixed. Me and Scully talked about raving about that trade, thinking like, what are we? He went for nothing basically. Why did they give him up? And then he had the season he had. Over 70 is plus 100 right now. Under is minus 125. I don't think they get to 71. I just don't. I don't see it. I know that division is so questionable, but it's hard for teams in that division to get to 85 wins. To say a team that's going to finish fifth or fourth or fifth to get 71,
it is the most cannibalistic division in the league. I think by far. Because no team in divisional play can gain any sort of consistency. Because we saw what happened between the Twins and the Guardians last year. They just kept beating the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
There'd be stretches where Twins would sweep them, Guardians would go in there and sweep the 4-game series, vice versa. And then you had the White Sox there just playing with themselves while La Russa had a mental episode every 3 days.
Shots fired across the.
Sorry. That was uncalled for.
That's a Chicago bash coming from the other side. Yeah, so fixable. Yes, I think this team is. I think what they did, and I agree with you. Hiring AJ, getting him in that situation, I think was the right move. They just jumped at the wrong free agents when they should have waited a couple more years to get more players built up.
It should have been purely investment in the youth movement. It should have been investment in lower cost free agents who have upside, but are also short-term solutions that can net you long-term value at the deadline. And they tried to just completely skip over that step and go straight to contention. They tried to do what the Rangers tried to do. The only difference is that the Rangers actually signed multiple guys to max deals and are actually somewhat entertaining to some aspect.
We will talk about that team in
that's going to be a fun episode. That's going
to be a nightmare of an episode. What I on that note, fixable. Yeah, I think. Yeah, we talked about that. What I will say is, okay, so this is the last run. The next Friday that we will have, where the next drop will happen. These are coming. This will come out on the 24th, which you're watching currently. The next one will be on the 3rd of March. We'll do another 5. I'll tell you the teams. I won't tell you the order we're talking about, but The Angels, the Rockies, the Giants, the Royals, and the Diamondbacks will all be featured next week, next run. We're getting a little bit more excited. Our episodes may go a little longer because when there's good teams, it's a lot to talk about, a lot of fun. Like,
And
comment, subscribe. Go ahead.
I'll tease this. There's one team in those 5 that I think had a very, very good offseason and could potentially, if the nightmare scenario occurs among our contenders, backdoor their way into a potential wild card spot, or at least contend for that spot in September. It's one of those 5 teams. Who it is, find out.
So yeah, like, comment, subscribe, follow us on Twitter. We'll be active telling us who we're picking nightly, live tweeting games, getting angry, watching everybody trip over the giant bases, no one being able to do the switches and the pitch clock. We'll catch you next week. 5 new teams. Interested to see who Scully picks. I have no idea, so find out next week.